Hi and welcome to the Mark Cookery channel. So this is our second video in the outdoor pizza oven build. The first video goes into some detail with regard to what you're going to need to actually complete this project, so go and watch that first before you actually watch this one. In this video I'm going to show you how to make the three templates that you're going to need. One is for the pizza oven dome, the second is for the pizza oven base, and the third is the brick tiles that we're going to use to actually decorate the outside of the pizza oven once it's built. So there's quite a lot to get through in this video, so let's crack on and get started. Okay, so the first template we're going to look at is the actual pizza dome template itself. And for that, the first thing we're going to need is a sheet of material which is 1 meter wide by 1.2 meters in length. Now I've used loft packs in order to create those sheets. It was the cheapest way that I could find to do it, because although a 8x4 sheet of plywood might have been slightly cheaper, I had no way of transporting that size of material from the DIY store to home. So I thought these were handier, and there's not really that much difference. So the first thing I had to do with these actual loft packs, which come in 3 sections, is run some glue down the seam of each one and then join them all together, put them on a flat surface, a flat level surface, and leave them to actually cure overnight. If you're not using these loft packs, if you're using something like plywood, make sure it's a 1/2 inch thick plywood, so that's about 12 millimeters. Don't use anything thinner than that, because both of these templates, this and the actual oven base template, will be taking some weight on them. So now that we've got our sheet material, so this is the width, this is the 1 meter width, that's the 1.2 meter length. We need to take the width, measure where the center is, mark 2 or 3 lines, and then using a straight edge, we want to mark a line directly down the center of the board. Okay, so now that we have our center line running the length of the 1.2 meters, we now need to measure from this back edge 45 centimeters in and just place a mark on the center line. So the center line is what all of the measurements will be taken from in the future. So now that we've made our mark on the center line, we just need to take a small drill bit, so this is a 2.5 millimeter drill bit, and just drill a small pilot hole in there. This will be the guide for a screw which will go in there later. So once we've marked our center line, the next thing we want to do is to look at manufacturing a marking device so we can mark a perfect circle to cut out for the gym ball. Now I've got a piece of strip wood here which is a 2.4 meter length of strip wood, and the dimensions of this are 18 millimeters by 28 millimeters. Now the reason I'm being so specific there is this strip wood will also be used to make the template for the brick tiles. So from this I'm now going to cut a 50 centimeter, a 1/2 meter length off this to use as a device to mark that circle. So once we've got this strip wood cut, I then want to come in from the end about 1 centimeter, and in the center of the strip wood I just want to drill another pilot hole right the way through. Next thing I want to do is just take a screw that is about maybe another 1/2 centimeter longer than the actual depth of the strip wood, and just place that into the end. If you attempt to place a screw into something as poor as strip wood without creating a pilot hole, it will definitely split, especially if you're looking at doing it towards the end of the wood. So now that we've got our length of strip wood with the screw protruding through the end, the next thing I want to do is I want to measure from the point of the screw up 35 centimeters and just make a mark towards the center. So we've now placed our mark 35 centimeters from the point of the screw. The next thing I'm going to do is take an 8mm drill bit, so that's the same diameter as a pencil which I'm using, and I'm going to drill all the way through this strip wood through the mark that we've made. So that's our first hole drilled. The next thing we want to do is from the point of the screw again, we want to measure up 41 centimeters and repeat this process. So mark the strip wood and then drill directly through with an 8mm drill bit, or whatever drill bit is the same diameter as the pencil you're going to use. So from the point of the screw, 41 centimeters, drill another hole. So we've now got our marker prepared. So from the actual screw tip, we've got a hole 35 centimeters and one at 41 centimeters. So the next thing we need to do is locate the pilot hole that we drilled earlier and just screw this down, but make sure that the piece of wood can still rotate. We then place our pencil into the first hole at 35 centimeters, and then we want to go around and mark a perfect circle. The reason that we don't use a piece of string, so I've seen people put a screw in here with a loop on the piece of string and then place a pencil into the loop, is that the pencil has a tendency to do this, and that will make this actual mark wholly inaccurate. The problem is that the way I've designed this template, we need this waste wood from the center in order to create the tunnel or the entrance to the actual pizza dome itself. Okay, so that's the circle marked out that we're going to cut out so that the actual gym ball will fit in there. The second hole, so this is 6 centimeters from the first hole, and this is going to be how thick the wall of the vermiculite concrete is going to be. So this will actually act as a guide. So we're cutting this bit out. We will be left on the template with a circle 6 centimeters wider, and once we start putting on the vermiculite concrete, that will give us a good guide as to where to stop. So that's the 2 circles marked out. You can see using this very simple method how accurate those circles are. You just wouldn't get that if you used a piece of string. So now what we want to do is we want to cut out this inner circle, but we need to be as accurate as possible. So I'm going to be placing this onto a work jig. I'm then going to use a 10mm bit on the inside of the line, so just so that the outside edge of the drill bit will touch the line, I'm going to drill through, and that's going to give me enough room to actually get the electric jigsaw blade into, and I'm just going to take my time as accurate as possible to go around, because as I said before, this is going to be used for the actual tunnel or the entrance to the pizza oven dome. If you haven't got an electric jigsaw, you will be able to do this using a pad saw. These are relatively inexpensive, but I think what you'll have to do there is drill at least 2 or 3 10mm holes just on the inside of the line to give you enough room to actually get the blade in, and then again just take your time going around. Try and make this as accurate as you possibly can. So once we've cut the hole out for the actual gym ball, the next thing we need to do, especially if we're using these loft packs, is to actually strengthen the loft pack and give the platform a bit of rigidity. So I've found some old scraps of wood. Now that I know where the hole is, I'm able to place those on to give it some strength. And then the other thing we need to do, whether you're using pieces of wood like this or whether you're using bricks to block this up, the face of this actual board has to be off the floor by 33 centimeters or 13 inches if you're going to be using the extra large gym ball from Decathlon. So not only will you have to do in each corner, but also make sure you go around the actual circle itself, because this is where the majority of the weight is going to be when you start to put the vermiculite concrete on there. So now we've got our platform on this level supported base. The next thing we want to do is just mark out the guides for where the pizza oven entrance is going to go once we've built that. So we have our center line here, and please ignore any other marks you see that I don't talk about, because this is the first template we did and I was looking around at different things, trying different options, whether they worked or whether they didn't. So just concentrate on the things that I want you to actually take note of. So we have our center line here. What we need to do now is measure 16.5 centimeters. So 2 marks there on that side. Take our straight edge and then mark a line down. 16.5 centimeters on this side, and again with the straight edge, mark a line down. So that represents the inside edge of our wall of our of the entrance to the pizza oven. From the center line again, we want to measure 22.5 centimeters either side. Again, put a mark and a line in, and 22.5 centimeters on this side, and put a line in, and that carries on the guide, the 6 centimeter guide, all the way around the structure where the vermiculite concrete will end at. So the next thing to do is to mark out the wood templates for the actual entrance or the tunnel to the pizza oven. Now we're going to use the waste piece of wood that came from cutting out for the gym ball. Now I've built the first pizza oven, so I've actually used that piece of wood. So what I've done here is I've taken some cardboard and I've made a template of the actual piece of wood that comes from there. So I just want to show you the marking out process that you guys will do in order to get the wooden forms for the actual entrance. So the first thing we do, on your piece of wood that came from the center, you'll still have that center line running down the center, and you'll also have that pilot hole, that drill hole that you made, that the pivot screw went in. So what we need to do is, at one end, we want to measure from the center line out 16.5 centimeters, and then mark a line that runs parallel with the center line. So we've got that line in. We now need to do the same on this side of the center line, so 16.5 centimeters again, and mark a line down. Right, so on your piece of wood now, you'll have these 2 lines in. The next thing we want to do is, from where the line meets the edge of the circle, we want to measure down 16 centimeters and put a line in on either side. So now we've got our 2 marks in, 16 centimeters down from the edge. We just want to take a straight edge and just mark across. So now that you've marked out your piece of wood for the first wooden template, take a large drill bit and you want to drill in each corner just on the outside edge of these lines, so that you're able to go down with a jigsaw blade or with a pad saw and be able to turn and go across. You need as much of this wood as possible, so make sure that you keep these cuts accurate. So from your round piece of waste wood, you'll then have one of the wood templates. The next thing to do is to place that on top of the remainder of the wood that you've got, and just make sure you keep it as close as possible, because we need as much wood here as we can, because the third wooden template we're going to make is actually larger than the first 2. So you place this on nice and accurate with the edge all the way around, and then just mark around the first one that you cut, And there's no need to obviously drill a hole here because you can get the blade in that way, and you won't need to drill a hole on this side either because you can just come down there. So we need to cut down these lines to get the second wooden template. So now we've got 2 templates and they should be exactly the same. The next thing we need to do is to do a third wooden template, but this one is going to be a lot larger than these 2. So this is a kind of shape that you'll be left with the piece of wood that you've got. So what we need to do is roughly gauge from this drill hole on the centre line, roughly where the centre is, or the equal space between those 2 cuts, and then draw a line from the drill hole to the outside edge. We then need to start doing some measuring now. So from the centre line we want to measure out 22.5 centimetres. So do that twice and then a line down, the same process as you did for the first one, just a different measurement. So now that we've got these 2 lines, where the line meets the outside edge, we want to measure down 22 centimetres on either side. And then from these 2 marks, just a straight edge and draw across. So the next thing we need to do now is just cut out as we've done previously with the other 2, and then that's it. We don't need any more of this wood. So obviously I've been using that piece of cardboard just as an example, as a demonstration of how you actually cut out from the piece of wood that you've got left over from the centre. So what you'll actually end up with is 2 of the wood templates which are the same size, and then a third one which is much bigger. So we need to put the larger one to one side for a minute, and what we're going to do is we're now going to join these 2 together with some strip wood in between. So what I've actually got is a 1.8 metre piece of cheap strip wood. I think this was less than £2. This again is the 18mm by 28mm diameter wood. However, it's not that crucial for this particular exercise, just as long as the wood is substantial enough that it will hold these 2 wooden plates in place rigidly. So what we need to do now is we need to cut 9 lengths of this 20 centimetres long. So now that we've got our 9 pieces of wood, and just a point on that, I used a handsaw for these, but if you're using something like a miter saw or an electric chop saw, the blade on that is at least 2mm thick, 2 to 3mm, which means that if we're cutting a 1.8 metre length of wood with a miter saw, we're going to lose at least 2 to 3mm every time we cut, which means that a piece of wood 1.8 metres in length is just not long enough, because the last piece you cut will be significantly shorter than the rest. So if you're using something like a miter saw or a chop saw, make sure that the strip wood you've got is more than 1.8 metres in length. So we've got those. The next thing we need to do is take our 2 plates, the ones that are identical size, and I've used a 3mm drill bit to drill some pilot holes around the outside edge. So 1 in each corner, 1 dead centre at the top of the arch, and then spaced evenly between the holes that you've drilled. So in effect you'll end up with 9 holes, and the reason for that is we're going to put a screw through there, and then these pieces of strip wood are going to be used as almost like a bridging piece between the 2 plates. Okay, so now that we've done all of the pilot holes in the 2 wooden templates all the way around, the next thing we want to do is actually screw these 2 together with the strip wood in between. So I'm using a 30mm wood screws or 1.25 inch, and all you need to make sure of is that the top edge of the actual strip wood doesn't protrude beyond the actual edge of the wooden form. So once we've screwed all the strip wood together, this is what we're going to end up with. So the next thing we need to do is take our last template, our last piece of wood, and that will go on one end. So what we need to do now is to measure in from the edge 6 centimeters either side to make sure this is nice and central. And then once we've done that, and we know that the actual entrance is central to this piece, we then need to just put a couple of screws in this side through and into this plate just to hold this in place. So that's the outer plate now screwed into place. So as far as the woodwork part of this form is concerned, that's it all done. The next thing we need to do is inflate the gym ball, and then we'll position this in place. So before we inflate the gym ball, we just need to make sure that there are no rough edges on the inside of this circle. So just take a piece of sandpaper and just go around, all the way around the edge. Now these gym balls are very tough, however, when we place the vermiculite concrete on top of the gym ball, that will push the sides out. So there is a possibility that if you've got any sharp areas around this circle, then potentially the gym ball could puncture, and if it does that before the concrete sets, everything will collapse in. So this is literally just a 2-minute job, and it's well worth doing. So we've smoothed off the inside of this circle just to make sure there's no sharp pieces. We've now inflated the gym ball, and we've just inflated it enough so it just touches the inside edge of our actual circle. Make sure that the valve is facing down, and then place that into our hole, and just ensure that this actual gym ball is actually touching the actual floor. So now we've got the gym ball in place, the next thing to do is we want to put our wooden form in place. So we just take it, and the 2 inner lines that we marked onto the platform earlier, we just want to make sure that this wooden form lines up with those, and it just touches the base of the actual gym ball. So once we're happy that that's all lined up and in place, the next thing we want to do is take a drill bit and just drill a pilot hole at 45 degrees, 2 of those, and then we're going to use some screws, some 2-inch screws, and we're just going to go in and actually just screw this whole form down to the actual platform itself, just to ensure that it doesn't move when we start to apply the vermiculite concrete. So once we've got the ball and the wooden form for the entrance in place, the next thing we need to do is to make a card template of this profile around the ball, and then that will be used on these flexible cutting boards which I mentioned in the first video, in order to cut the profile out with a strong pair of scissors, and then it's these flexible cutting boards that will be used to cover the entrance form before we put the vermiculite concrete on. So what I've done basically is just joined some bits of card together and just kept snipping away with the scissors until we actually get that profile and we're happy with it. So as I said, now I can take that away and we can use that as the profile to cut out the chopping boards. Right, so we've got our card template from the entrance tunnel. The next thing we need to do is to take our flexible cutting boards, put them up to each other and just attach them together, and I'm going to be using duct tape to do that. Okay, so I've joined those 3 together. The next thing I want to do is take our card template, centralize it, and then I'm going to take a permanent marker, mark around the outside edge, the profile, and then cut that out with a strong pair of scissors. Don't waste these end bits, they're going to come in for the pizza oven floor template. So the next thing to do with this now is to put this onto the wooden form for the entrance and screw it all down. So the next thing we need to do is actually attach this plastic chopping board profile to the wooden template for the entrance. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start, make sure it's all nice and neat. I'm going to start in at the bottom of one edge, place about 3 screws, move up to the next piece of strip wood, 3 screws, and then bend this around, and that will ensure that we get a nice tight fit over the top. Do not screw into these end wooden profiles that we made earlier. Remember, we made the 2 that are the same size. Do not screw into those, because the way I've designed this is once the concrete is fully cured, we deflate the gym ball from underneath, because the valve will be underneath. That will then give us access to this panel from the inside. We can then unscrew the 9 screws that hold in this strip wood, and that panel will then go through that hole and come out. On the front, we then unscrew from here and then unscrew the 9 screws in there, and that panel, or this wooden form, will come this way, leaving just obviously the strip wood in the centre, and we can just simply fold all that in and then pull that out. The problem you've got is if you screw the plastic chopping board into these 2 wooden profiles, because the concrete is in the way, you're not going to be able to then do what we've designed this to do, to demold it very easily. And what you'll then be forced to do is to try and pull this out this way, and the potential is, if the concrete hasn't fully cured, you will get cracks where the actual entrance joins the main dome. So just make sure that when you're screwing these plastic chopping boards onto the form, that you only screw into the strip wood. So that's the entrance form done. I've screwed all of the plastic chopping boards down. I've then gone over the top with a few lengths of duct tape just to add a little bit more rigidity, and then sealed the edge where the profile meets the gym ball again, just to add a little bit more rigidity as well. So the next thing to do now is to prepare the templates for the pizza oven floor.